It's just connecting to the server. So welcome everybody to Unlocking the Power of Coaching. Big thank you for joining us for what's a really hot and very exciting topic. We are, as you just heard, recording the session, so you'll be able to share it with colleagues who've been unable to attend today. And a couple of housekeeping items. We've got the chat box open, and Helen and I will be reviewing that as questions and comments come in. We also have a Q&A section that you can click on and pop your questions in. Helen and I, again, will try to address that as those questions come in. Some we'll save for the end, some we'll take in the flow of the conversation. This session is meant to be interactive. Obviously, with 230 registrations and about 50 of us on the call, we can't have a voice-to-voice, but use the chat, use the question box, and let's make this a two-way dialogue as much as possible. So with that, let's get started. Let me tell you about, or let me introduce you to my co-conspirator. Actually, no, Helen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I'm Helen. I am a client partner based in Hong Kong. I'm also the APAC Master Coach, supporting the region in executive coaching, governance, and cadence. So as you can see, coaching is one of my passions, and I'm really happy to be here to share with you some of the our observation, research finding, and just learn from Andrew on coaching as well. So I'm looking forward to today's session. Andrew.
Thanks, Helen. So my name is Andrew Calvert. You can see the glamour shot there, executive facilitator and coach. I've been working in the space of coaching for close to 20 years, both as a leader, coaching on the job, as a coach, coaching clients, and then as a trainer, building that coaching capability for teams, for functions, and for organizations. So it's a passion of mine, it's a passion for Helen's. So super excited to be sharing this with you today. So with those introductions, Helen, why don't you get the attention grabber and tell us this story?
Well, recently I came across a study, not a new study, but done several years ago by a large organization, a global organization, that they find the headline was the company has a 250 million cost saving from a change of a leadership behavior. So I say, hold on a second, how did that happen? So I read on to the study. And so could you guess what would that behavioral change that result in a 250 million cost saving? So a bit of background, the company was engaging in a simplification initiative because there's a lot of overlap, it's quite bureaucratic. So they want to move into a more agile, nimble, flexible way for a non-linear environment. So that's what they have, an initiative involving 300 of its top leaders around the world. And that's one thing they'd be engaging, each leader engaged for 100 days. And at the end, that's a 250 million cost saving.
So 300 leaders, it's almost $1 million each, which is a huge saving. I'm just putting out to the audience in the chat, what do you think the leadership behavior that gave rise to those savings was? Pop in the chat. Are you prepared to tell us your thoughts? We'd love to hear. It's fascinating when we begin to get these big data experiments going. So Sue Brown says coaching. Melissa says providing feedback. Shift from telling to coaching. Love those answers. We got a smart audience today, Helen. We've got to up our game. Talent development, retention, Inez, that's a good one. Yes. Sharon says listening. Natasha, a learning culture. Yeah. Well, people unable to reach their potential. Thanks, Andrea. Philippe says, how do we know the savings came from coaching? Well, we know that they had savings. That's their data, not ours. But we're not sure where it came from. That's the question we're asking you. And Jay Tam says retention. Few people say retention. And that is one of the good things about having people stay there, understand the business better. But Helen, I'm not going to do a drum roll because I'm no good at beatboxing. But shall we give them the answer?
Yes, please. It is reflection. So the context was the company is moving from a very linear, so the business model was set up for a linear world. That's the world that we are very familiar with. As the organization recognized the trend even several years ago, they're moving into a non-linear kind of a chaos complex world. They want the manager to change their mindsets. So the bottom line is we have very, very smart managers. We're not going to tell them what to do. We want them to figure out how they want to show up as a leader in this changing world. And so they engage in a journey with the leaders. So they have 1 week immersive program, but they have about 60 days lead into that program. In those 60 days, they have the leader to practice reflection, thinking of what are the attitude toward those organization or environmental obstacle, what the attitude and action toward those, and how did that impact their action, their performance, and the team performance. And they also need to ponder on how would the role change to remove those barriers in an organization. So there's 60 days of that, and then they come in for an immersive program. They do, exercises. They do, they had to do teach back because they have been reflecting. So they had to do a practice with their peers who also been thinking about the same thing and how they're going to implement in the workplace. And then after that, they're also engaging in reflection, all with the support of executive coaching. And so one of the biggest learning they got is it's not about skill set. It's really about the mental shift. And that only happened with the reflection the leaders were able to engage in. And I thought that was very powerful. It's about as simple as that, they're able to yield substantial saving and shifting the direction of the organization to a more collaborative and more prepared for a non-linear world that they are operating in. So I thought that was a very powerful study.
I like that, Helen. And building on what Helen just said, when they were doing that reflection, the leaders were asked to reflect every day for 90 days, 3 questions, just 3 questions. What was your biggest challenge today? Take the time to write that out. How did you overcome it? What was the action you took? And then what would you do differently next time? So that's we're asking about what was the learning, because maybe you got it perfect and you'd repeat that, but maybe you didn't get it quite right and you would do something different. But those 3 questions created that pause, that mental shift, as Helen articulated, that got them to just step back and think about what they were doing, not just do what they were doing. And that's a big benefit for coaching. Now, that leads us quite neatly, starting with that first question. It says, what was your biggest challenge today? That really brings us on to the challenges that you're facing, because just like that large corporation, they lived in a VUCA world. Chances are that you are too. So we'd like to do a quick poll. Helen's going to take us through it.
So we love poll. So we're going to ask you to participate in our first poll, is to share with the group about what challenges your leaders are experiencing. A number of key themes that we've been hearing from our clients. So we also would like to see whether your leaders also experiencing those challenges. And then we can share, what we find here and also some of the global data that we have. So we could benchmark. Thank you, Lauren. So here's the poll, and please take your time to check those that apply to you. You could check as many as you want.
The catch-all is if you're not seeing one of the challenges that you're facing, pop it in the chat. We'd love to gather that for our own insight, but also maybe we're able to tailor the presentation towards the challenge that you're facing. But just looking at what's coming up on screen here, we've got about 90 of us on the call today. So we've had about just over half respond. Give that a moment or two longer. This is it work-life balance?
2 of them are coming up quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
Both racing.
Yeah, it's getting close. And it's always interesting watching these. I feel like a little bit like a horse racing announcer. I feel like I'm in Happy Valley announcing one of the races. Ted has just said financial uncertainty. Yeah, thanks for the honesty and candor, Ted. Yeah, that is something that some of us are facing.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I love that one. Perspective of what's in it for me, aligning to the business strategy goals. And that's one of the things we'll talk about in subsequent slides, but people are reevaluating their relationship to their employer and to what they do for a living. And that perspective of what's in it for me is very central to that. Okay, we've had the poll open for a little while. Let's close the poll and share the results. Helen, anything stand out from those to you?
Not surprising to see keeping up with the constant change and transformation and uncertainty come out the top. And then managing the hyper team and the balancing work-life family challenge. That's like what you talk about, what's in it for me and how do I prioritize the different pillar in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're right. There's really no surprises there. Interesting that we keep hearing about the opportunity and transformation, how much things are going to change, and how we as individuals, whatever level of the organization, should embrace the opportunity that's presented to us. That's a laudable comment and a great reframe of the uncertainty we face. But I'm interested that promotion, transition to a larger role, is such a low number there. So about 12% think that. Okay, so let's move on from the poll. If you can just close those, Laura, that'd be great. Let's move on and talk about, in summary, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've just lived this for the last 18 months to 5 years, but we've had a perfect storm. And this is what we as individuals face, but we as leaders face. And I'm not going to go across all of them. We all know about the global pandemic. I've already touched on that, changing perceptions towards corporations and the expectations of work. But then the subtext, which has been going on for longer, about the automation of tasks, machine learning, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, that fourth industrial revolution, has really begun to impact the way we do things. It's impacted the legal industry dramatically. In fact, one large law firm, I won't mention any names, are now shifting to be a large consulting firm because a lot of the legal work they do is being replaced by machine learning and AI. They're actually moving towards a more consultative approach. They've got some smart, talented people, very business focused. They're shifting their business. All of that change, all of that uncertainty has given rise to social and political unrest in lots of countries. Even traditionally stable countries have seen challenges. And that's caused a change in social and regulatory dynamics. Just think about the number of companies that would just normally slash and burn workforces when profits fell. Governments have stepped in and said, no, don't. In some companies, it's illegal to lay workers off. So that's changed in the last 18 months or so. And then the demographic shift we're seeing in Western Europe and North America with older populations, younger populations in different parts of the world. Our leaders are now dealing with a world that the playbook they learned when they were learning to lead is no longer applicable for. I got some stats as I was taking my preparation for this. 60% of millennials, that's between 20 and 40 years old now, approximately, are open to changing jobs at any given time. And more than 1/3 of those millennials expect to change jobs in the next 12 months. So just as a leader, look around your organization. How many people fall into that category? Can you afford to lose 1/3 of them? That's quite a question.
And Melissa raised a very good point about keeping up with the constant change that have almost become part of the new normal. At what point might leaders to seeing this challenge as part of life? Great observation.
It's a wonderful one, Melissa. And I think we have to get away from the idea that things will settle down. I don't think they ever will. I think, and if you think about it, our political, our religious, our economic, our educational systems are all about change and then stability, change and then stability, change. But now we just got change all the way through. And I'm not sure it's going to be a generational change. I think some managers are just going to adapt. The ones that can't will find themselves doing different things. because the pace of change is accelerating, it's not calming down. So the assumptions we make will shift. And as we talk about assumptions, expectations have changed as well. Just take a quick look at that slide. You know, hybrid workforces are a relatively new concept, but two things are crystal clear. Hybrid workforces are here to stay, and they've changed the talent landscape. Think about the countries that are doing visas, Greece, Lithuania, Mauritius. You go work there, pay 10% income tax, but work anywhere in the world. The huge digital nomadic population that's exploded in the last few year and a half or so. 77% of people in a recent Adecco study said they want more flexibility on how and where they work. Some people think it's about a 50-50 split between working from the office and working from home, but that's aggregated data. There will be a range in there. Only 12% of employees want to work full-time back in the office. 72%, they want that hybrid office. That's a BBC research that we did. I'm just looking at some of the stats I've got here. The world has changed dramatically, and we as leaders have to recognize that it's changed dramatically. And how do we address that with our people? And what that means is that leaders are now looking for answers to problems they've never had to deal with before. And what that means for leaders are these areas of focus, areas that they're being coached on and that they're coaching on. You know, as a coach myself, and as Helen as a coach, the number of times you get called, so I want to know about how do I motivate my team. I run a regular coaching capability class for a large French bank. Every single class, 20 people at a time, 3, 4, 5 people say, I want to inspire and motivate my team. I want to inspire them because I'm not seeing them every day. It's a clear and present thought for everybody. How do they balance the strategic with the tactical? That becomes another part of the day-to-day stuff. How does that link to what the new strategy of the organization is? Can they articulate the organization strategy? People are thinking about what they stand for, or what they want to be known for, a kind of brand reputation, and it goes into networking and career planning, etc. And then we're finding that as the world has shifted, stakeholder management, relationship management is much more important for leaders at all levels. We're looking at psychological safety. Are people prepared to speak up as we go to this VUCA world and we need everybody to be engaged? If we haven't got psychological safety, then people don't want to be engaged. They don't want to take the risk of speaking up when they've been told what to do for years. So leaders have to find a way to create that psychological safety. It's coming with a coaching style. And then everybody, and this is something that you all have addressed in your own lives, we're all working harder, working longer, working more intensely. So how do we step up, balance our personal well-being, physical, psychological, emotional, with being asked to work at a higher level? So these are some huge challenges that we all face, and we're finding that coaching at an organization, a functional and an individual level is really beginning to pop in the heads, hearts, and minds of decision makers to help get good results. I've done a lot of talking, Helen. Anything you'd like to reflect on?
The psychological safety has been quite close to my heart recently. One study I read, I'm a psychologist, so I read a lot of studies. And one of the studies I read recently, I found that's quite telling, is a study that was looking at innovative company. You know, the company that produces a pattern and, is known for the innovation and productivity versus company who want to be innovative but unable to. And they're looking at the differentiation between the companies. And one differentiation they find is quite prominent is how stable the company is. A lot of people assuming innovation with very fluid and constant changing organization structure, but actually they find because of the company is stable and is anchored, so people feel like they can go out and do more risk. And I thought, oh, that's a nice paradigm, paradox too, to think about companies that we are so we need to change and all the time, so we'll be innovative. Actually, people need that psychological safety,
to
able
step
to
in.
do those innovative work.
That's good to know. And
Yeah.
here's the rub. As I advance the slide, there you go. Deck's a little bit slow today. The question that a lot of organizations are having to face is, are their leaders ready for that move from the old normal to ready for next? And we call it ready for next because what's next today will be different to what's next tomorrow, to next week, to the month after. So ready for next. Are they ready for that shift? And I often see this. Helen and I go into organizations where they've got employee feedback surveys. Managers say they're very effective or somewhat effective at coaching and developing their people. Their employees say they're poor or not very effective at developing or managing or developing their team. So there's a big disconnect. Managers think they're better than they are, and their employees think, and that's at all levels, C-suite all the way down to the shop floor. And I'm not going to read all of the bullet points there, but there are some really interesting stats that I came out with. Only 50% of respondents feel that leaders lived up to the stated values of their organization. Only 50% think that. That was a US study, and that was based in 2019. 2019 was before this happened, before the world that we currently find ourselves. So I wonder what that number is now. It's quite something. In October 2020, an ineffective study of ineffective leadership showed it had significant impact on individual and organizational performance. And that's something that our CEO shared with us last year, is that the pandemic has magnified any underlying issues. It's really brought them to the fore. Sue says, why do you think managers believe they are better at coaching and motivating employees than they actually are? Well, there'd be some kind of cognitive bias in there, Sue. And I guess I'm going to go out on a limb here and say perhaps there's a lack or a different level of empathy. They know how they feel when they're talking to the employee, but they're not putting themselves in the employee's shoes. So the words they use, the body language they display, the frequency of coaching, they think that's enough or good enough. But in the employee's perspective, it's ad hoc. It's on the fly. It's in a difficult situation that they get in coaching. They want it to be more structured, and that's a theme we hear a great deal. But that's a great question. And Helen, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
I think there has been studies in the past showing, asking people how good are you as a driver, and most people will list themselves at the top 10% of the driver. Most people. So as you can see, we unconsciously we think of ourselves better at certain things than we actually are. So it's like you say, it's a natural bias that we have. And so without the leader actually observe and reflect on their own leadership effectiveness, that's the automatic pilot they're going on to. But once they reflect, observe, and getting feedback, that's where the, like you say, Andrew, holding the mirror up for them and looking at themselves from a different perspective. So,
and a nice reflection there, no pun intended, from Penny. They possibly lack self-awareness and are motivated by different things. Absolutely. And that, again, that self-awareness, Penny, if they were aware that their employees were motivated by different things, they might couch their coaching or their examples or their exhortations in a way that would connect better with the employee. So that emotional intelligence is something that we need to work on a number of different levels.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of talking about coaching and how wonderful it is. Helen, what's next?
So the next is your interest being in coaching mean that you are here and you want to interested to thinking about implementing, or if implementing certain coaching practices in your organization. So we'd like to take the opportunity to invite you to share with us about what are some of the practices your organization is currently doing to support coaching. Is that really for peer sharing, so we can all learn from each other? Thank you for the poll. And so please take a few seconds to review the options. And again, this is a single choice question, so you can only choose one key thing the organization is doing right now.
And again, if what you're doing doesn't appear in our poll, pop it in the chat. We'd love to hear what else is going on. There's a couple of glaring standouts as I'm looking at the, yeah, Louise, I hear you. I hear you. There's a wonderful phrase called the democratization of coaching. It's like we talked about at the beginning, when you're on a team, everybody gets a coach, and everybody performs better with the coach. You know, Stephen Curry, the NBA player who can score 3-point baskets from with impunity, has a coach. He's one of the best players in the league, has a coach. So we've got those answers coming in. Lisa says, currently coaching high potentials, individual senior leaders, as well as all general staff by short 2-hour workshops. Okay, so building some stuff up. Provide external coaching for some people, both identify talent and also for development. Yeah.
Yep.
Some internal coaching capability. Thanks, Penny. Okay, I think we've got about 2/3 of us have voted. Let's share the results. Okay, Helen, what jumps out of you there?
Very good to see that most organizations are doing more than just one thing to promote coaching in the organization, which is a really good news. Yeah, providing external coach for the target group, like the high potential, the executive. So I think there's a lot of room on you know, what about the employees? Kind of coaching would they get? So it's good to see the internal capability building.
Yeah.
To support that. And seems still organization who are figure out what would they do about coaching in the organization.
Wow. I guess a couple of other things stand out. One, nobody has external head coaches for all employees. So that's a big deficit, sadly. Establishing full-time internal coaching capabilities, you know, KPMG, Stanchart Bank, they have full-time dedicated coaches, people from the line who go through an ICF certification, become embedded in the business, and can be available. I don't think they can do 8 hours of coaching a day, but they can do many coaching conversations in a day. And that really helps lift capability. So interesting, very few have done that. And then I guess one that stands out for me, Helen, is that bottom statistic, none of the above.
Yeah.
Some organizations aren't using coaching at all, which is a great shame, because coaching is so powerful. If I can just move on to the next slide and close the poll. As we talk about power, you were going to talk about this slide, Helen.
Yeah, the impact of coaching. It's still till these days there are still, you know, mystery around what is the impact of coaching. They still think of coaching as a black box, not quite sure what's going on there and what would the outcome and impact. And actually, there's a lot more study that came out, independent study, not from LHH, but you know, ICF, you know, Garner. Let's talk about the impact of coaching. So impact of coaching is not just look at one individual, because company is a team sport, right? We're not just looking at one player, but looking at collective effort of the organization and the leadership team. And so there are some really impressive data about, you know, the overall return of coaching. You know, the 250 million, that is one really eye-popping data that come out from the coaching and reflection that leadership engage in to achieve tangible business outcome. The other data, like, you know, return on investment, you know, people are unique. And so company recognize that. And so when coaching are done well, we usually ask manager and the coachee to ask how they see themselves being effective in that area and how they see themselves effective after the coaching and getting collective, you know, stakeholder sharing. And the result usually come with better team engagement, better team collaboration, and then better team output. And so some of those results are not immediately right after coaching, but takes time for the behavior to solidify and giving the output. And so that's, you know, the output could be in the tangible dollars term, as well as some of the more intangible but important aspect of coaching. You know, me and Andrew have been talking about the beginning of the session on Olympic, on sports. And it is an area that they know the power of coaching. Recently I read an article on some of the elite players in the world, Federer, Vanessa Williams, Messi, who just recently changed club. I mean, those players 20 years ago, they would not be playing. And they admit that they would not be playing without the coach, without the trainer to support them, to shift the mindset to play from a young player with that body to a player with a different physical body. And so they can stay in shape and still play at the top of the game. And they admit that without that science support, they would not be able to continue to perform in the game that they love.
I love that example, Helen. A lot of people, when they first go into their chosen profession, when they get busy, they just throw more hours at the problem. Yeah. When you have a coach, you can think more strategically about how you solve the increased demands, maybe give some stuff away, maybe learn a new skill. But the coach helps you think, how do you do more in the same amount of time, not how do you do more in more time, because eventually you run out of hours in the day.
Exactly.
But whilst I'm reflecting that, Inez just put the magic dollar question. I wonder how companies measure whether they have made their investment back. Want to take a crack at that one, Helen?
So we asked one of the questions we asked manager, because we have, in LHH's coaching model, the manager is very much part of the coaching journey with the coachee. So they have shared input, they share feedback. They are in the beginning of the coaching session to agree on the goal. And then at the end of the wrapping, they come and share feedback and observation. And most of the feedback we got is the manager saying they had made the investment back because they had seen the changes of the attitude on the mindset and the behavior that had led to change in behavior in a wider team and output. And so oftentimes the manager, the executive who's sponsoring the program are not looking at, am I making the however dollar that we gave LHH, but it's more about, do they see that behavioral change and mindset change? Have that person be more collaborative to result in a higher output and a better team player?
So as Helen's articulated, there's an intangible side of things in getting the manager, not the coach or the coachee, but getting the manager of the coach to say they've made their money back is one thing. Another thing is we know how much they're investing in the coaching training. We look at what kind of, I just had a brain burp. What we do is we look at what's the cost of recruitment, what's the cost of regretted or non-forced turnover. There's a dollar amount that goes straight to the bottom line where you have to replace valued employees. So where you see retention numbers change, and you can show that those individuals who've been retained have received coaching, there's a correlation, not perhaps causation, but correlation data that's accurate enough for organizations to say, okay, we spent $100,000 on coaching, we've retained these 9 key players, that saved us $800,000 in recruiting and training costs, we've made our money back. That's one of the ways they do it.
Yeah.
And as we talk about how everybody can be better as a coach and how they're measuring that, this is what some of our customers are saying.
Yeah, we extract those from some of the feedback from our coachee who participate in the executive coaching, and we extract some of them. One recent program that I was managing, some of the the repeat theme is that they have find that confidence through coaching, with more career coaching. They have find the confidence to show up, to apply, and prepare for the interview much better or much stronger than they would have without coaching. In the past, they would be doubting themselves, thinking about whether I should or should I not, and then may not show up into the best self in that in the internal selection process. But with coaching, they felt like, because with the coach that work alongside with me, that guide me and support me through this process, that I show up in my best self. So whether I get the job or not, I know I have that worth, and I will be remembered by that manager for the next opportunity. And so I thought that was a really powerful evidence of how coach is working with the leader, guide them, support them, and they come out differently at the end of the coaching journey.
I've been working with a coach at a large multinational who we were about 6 sessions into a 9-month program. And after the 6th session, she told me that people are now starting to come to her to ask for her advice. And she'd never seen that before. And when we kind of dug into that, it's because she's become more reflective. She asks better questions. She engages more people. So the behavior that's made her visible are very positive behaviors, which has in turn led people to her door to get her involved in what they're working on. So, the behaviors become very visible because that's what we can judge people by. And when you do the right things, it becomes very attractive, good for your career, good for your capabilities.
Yeah.
So with that story, with that little anecdote, the question on everybody's lips is, okay, we want some of this coaching stuff. How do we build a coaching culture? Well, I'm glad you were thinking of that question because this is our next slide. So executive championing. If your executive team aren't engaged or aren't involved, they won't drive engagement. So you need an executive sponsor and somebody who will walk the talk, who will not just say it's a good thing, but will be involved, will either be a coach or have a coach, share their coaching stories. One of the things that we find is a massive indicator is build coaching into your transformation or your change strategy. Change and transformation are slightly different, but build coaching into both of them. So make sure that you do regular debriefs with your direct reports in a coaching conversation. Do regular check-ins, but weave them into the fabric of what we do day to day. Managers and leaders don't have time to do another thing. So instead of saying, you do more of this behavior, say, when you're having this meeting, because managers have regular check-ins, turn it into a coaching conversation. Just don't turn it into a report out and mandate what behaviors need to be taken care of. Next is giving access to coaching to more people. Coaching works best when everybody gets it. We've talked about the football team, the cricket team, the tennis player example. Coaching works. Find ways, and there are lots of ways to coach at scale. We'll talk about those subsequently. Actually, the next one, equipping leaders with coaching skills. Coaching capability building up, down, and across the organization is super important. You can give all of your frontline leaders, all of them, skills in listening, questioning, giving feedback, and recognition. Those are the core of good coaching conversations. Or you might take it a slightly deeper level to a mid-level manager, give them the same core skills, but help them understand how they then embed those skills in everything they do to build that coaching culture from the inside out. Or finally, equipping leaders at coaching skills, you might go with the internal coaching cohort. I just worked with a large French manufacturer to develop 20 full-time coaches inside their organization, and then being able to link that coaching cohort to coaching for resilience, coaching through constant change, coaching before a performance management conversation, coaching during transformation, etc. And then finally, talking to transformation, linking coaching outcomes to strategy and results. If you can link coaching to the big picture, to your management by objectives, your MBOs, or your KPIs, you're going to be able to Inez's point, show where coaching has impacted positively the KPIs or MBOs that everybody has been looking for. And when you put all of those pieces in place, you are massively more likely to have a successful coaching culture take hold and grow. Helen, any reflections on this? And by the way, folks, keep those questions or comments coming in the chat. We'd love to hear what your reactions are to what we just put up on screen.
I completely agree with what you shared so far. And a lot of people are excited about, the company could be benefit from building a coaching culture. I think a lot of questions is like how to start and where to start. Do you get this kind of question, Andrew?
Yeah, and it really depends on where the organization wants to start, what's going to be culturally appropriate. Some people want to start with their high potentials and their mid-level managers. and build from the middle up and down. Others start with a broad range across the base and give all of their managers, their entry-level leaders, supervisors and first-time managers, those skills. Others, we want to take a cascading approach from the top down. So there's really a number of different ways. Find out what's going to suit you best.
I agree. And that is a good lead into the next slide, talk about the journey of building an organizational culture of coaching. So oftentimes start with ad hoc coaching, start with like different layers of organization. A lot of times start at the executive level, because when leaders recognize good coaching, they experience the good coaching. They want to cascade that to the organization. Team coaching has been very much in demand, because especially in leadership team, that they oftentimes say it's not just one leader, it's actually the whole team need to be coached. Going back to the sport analogy, that the whole team function, they need to have the same goal, same objective, and overcome similar organizational barrier and challenges to build a team toward common goal. So team coaching is also a way that company experiencing coaching, high potential. The coaching investing not just for now, but for the future, or the organization succession planning and development. And recently we see a lot more coaching in the D&I space. So D&I is not just about going to unconscious bias courses and that's it. It's more about how we support the diverse personal need, different group of people, the different individual need. In the career development, in the different career issues, like returning from maternity leave. That's one topic that been coached on. How to bring your best authentic self to the workplace. And so a lot of that are areas that being coached on at the moment. And then the next step is, once organization is having experienced the power of coaching, no pun intended, they want to do it more in systematic way. They want to have a process in place, and they start, incorporating that into performance discussion or development conversation. Some company call it, rather than performance. They start incorporating into career development conversation. It's not just about whether you've done well or not, but it's about longer term development. And one of the biggest hurdle, from what I heard, that company are not doing it, or manager are not doing it, because they don't know what to say. They don't have all the answer. And where coaching could benefit is, you don't have to answer. You're guiding your team to find the answer. And that's where the power of coaching could show up. And so our companies are incorporating coaching in the different aspect of the talent management journey. And as Andrew, you have worked with a lot of the company center of excellence. You start setting up, structure, process, and cadence, and to cascade the coaching in a scale, building up internal capability, having, standard way to engage coaching across the world. So leaders from different parts of the world could receive standard quality, consistent and quality coaching.
Actually, it's interesting you talk about center of excellence. One of the things I've seen quite a lot now is organizations will write a brief document, maybe 10, 12 pages, about what coaching is, what coaching isn't, and what coaching is used for. Because coaching isn't just about fixing problems. Actually, it's more powerful when you build capability. So that document, which goes out to HR business partners and kind of heads of function, allows them to get a better sense of what another tool they can use to address the ongoing operational situations that they face. Because not every operational situation is a problem. Operational situations go, okay, now how do we take this to the next level? How do we stabilize this? How do we make this even better? And that's one of the things that comes up. Cannon says, building coaching into companies' artifacts is also important in embedding. Absolutely. Your performance management process, your development process, what coaching is and isn't, and making your leaders aware of what the outcomes can be. And actually, that really brings us to kind of the elephant in the room. When we try to do this, people don't understand what coaching is, or they tried it and it didn't work for them, or they're threatened by it. And that individuals, processes, systems, cost structures could become a roadblock. And Helen, you were going to ask us some questions about this, right?
Yeah, and so I think this is a very good vision to have building a coaching culture. But let's talk about what are some of the roadblocks that you are facing when it comes to promoting coaching culture or coaching in organization, and collectively, what could we do to support, go around, not remove, but go around those roadblocks. And we have a lot of collective wisdom here, and so let's go to the next step. It's a quick step.
So what are some of the roadblocks you're facing, ladies and gentlemen? Pop them in the chat. We'd love to hear them. What are the, we can tell you about establishing a coaching culture, but I'd love to hear from you some of the challenges you face. Cost justification, ROI.
Very quick.
Now, actually, JTAM, I would say ROI, is that return on investment or return on individual? Because that's a wonderful way to reframe the ROI question. How do we want to get the most out of that individual? Okay, everybody's saying about cost, money, no budget, executive support. Okay, Andrew, we'll talk about that. Not enough time, not enough resources. Wow. Some don't do any work between coaching sessions. Well, there's the whole question there about the readiness of the individual to be coached, but I understand that. Teresa says lack of understanding, open mindset, too many projects, buy-in from one-up leaders, time, yeah. Senior leaders haven't experienced coaching, therefore don't believe in it. Dollars have a large part to play, yeah. And you want to see the results. Thanks, Jack Ming. Fear of change, yeah. Sharon, integration with so many initiatives, I hear you. Yes, Louise, confusing coaching with directing. Yeah, and they're actually quite opposite, aren't they? ROI is not understood, leaders very short-sighted. Okay, well, obviously we're preaching to the audience here, but we've got some steps on some subsequent slides to help you address some of these things. Now, I always like to use the metaphor of credit card debt. You don't suddenly wake up one morning and have $80,000 worth of credit card debt. What happens is over the course of months and years, you spend money and you don't pay off the bill. You spend money, you don't pay off the bill. And then all of a sudden, you realize that you have that debt. So once you realize you've got this great big debt, you can't just pay it down overnight. You have to take time to pay the debt down. It can take months and years. And the deficit we find with leaders not understanding coaching, not having the budget, being afraid of change, not able to articulate the ROI, all of those things have happened over the course of years. So we shouldn't assume that we can get rid of those biases, those insights, those assumptions overnight. It's going to take time. And that's one of the things we'll work on, is getting that commitment over the course of time. So how do we establish a coaching culture? Define what coaching is and what coaching behaviors should look like inside your organization. If you can articulate it clearly, we know what we're working towards. That's the aspiration. And once you've got what coaching is and what behaviors look like, now you've got current state, we've got desired states. And now we've got the destination. Now we've got to work on the journey. Establishing visible leadership support for coaching, that can be difficult if they don't believe in it. So get one of them a coach. If there's somebody being hired into a senior role, get them a coach. There are actually some organizations, one of our sister companies is doing a free month on one of their platforms for executive coaching I think it's for HR professionals. So there are organizations will have offers out there. Take advantage of those, see how you can use them to build that visible leadership support through direct experience. Obviously, align coaching to the broader business strategies and talent strategies of the organization. Most leaders fail in their first 18 months on the job. Think about that. When we talk about that, imagine you bring in a new managing director. You're going to pay them a 1.5 year salary. What's that? $300,000, $280,000, $500,000, whatever the number is. It's a lot of money, and they fail. That money's gone. What you've taught them evaporates and disappears. But by investing in a coach to help them in their first 120, first 180 days, and that's a much smaller number than the salary, you give them a much higher propensity to be successful. So align your coaching to the broader talent and business strategies. With your existing systems and processes. I'm thinking, development process, your performance management process. Build coaching into that regular check-ins, not just the once a year, once a quarter. Build it into that. And then as managers become more used to the language and terminology of coaching, communicate clear organizational expectations. How often do you expect them to talk to speak with their employees? What kind of outcomes are you expecting from those? Tell them about the metrics that you're monitoring. Once people know they're being measured, they'll start doing the kind of things that you need to work on. And as we talk about measurement and we talk about needs, the next slide really talks about the need today. Coaching leaders for the next disruption, the hybrid work. Helen.
Yeah, when I look at the title, I say I should call out the next great disruption is actually now, today, the hybrid work and the number of issues that arise from the last 18 months. That is leader prepared to deal with that? None of them are part of the management playbook that I have seen so far. So I saw some of the comment earlier, some of you shared the fear of change. And I think that's underpinned a lot of the resistance. But actually now the leader are out of the comfort zone. They have to deal with a exhausted workforce. They have to deal with a workforce that is digital overload. I think we all could identify with that. They had organizations are pushing the agility, flexible transformation agenda at a faster pace. Are they keeping up with it? They have to deal with, in the workforce now, people are not going to magically come back together. They will still be dispersed. And we have seen data showing not everybody will experience the same thing. According to a study that actually middle class, mid-management, white male have fared better. Sorry to mention that, Andrew, but have fared better in the last 18 months in pandemic than female, than people who are early in their career. So they have to deal with that reality in their team when they manage a diverse workforce. And also now people are open to hiring people from all over the world with different backgrounds. They're tapping into talent pool that they might not have think of before. And so, are they prepared to deal with that? And also, psychological safety coming back. People value that, the leadership. They want the authenticity, empathy. They expect that. It's not nice to have anymore. It's a must-have, especially when we are facing a great resignation, right? Is that what they call it now?
The great resignation, yeah.
The great resignation across the location in the world. Are the leaders showing up as authentic to engage the workforce who are ready to leave? When they see another leader, another company, they offer them the more authenticity and compassionate leadership. And so these are some of the elements, they are not in the playbook. They are not trained for that. How do we prepare them for it? And who work alongside with them? And that's where coaching bring in that benefit to support leader. Maybe in the past, they feel comfortable, but now they are out in the limb. I think organization, it could be benefit to support this leader with a coach to walk alongside with them. So that's some of again, we are throwing more data at you on the positive impact of coaching that bring to organization. So 80% people report a higher level of confidence. You'll be surprised how many coaching that come in with a request of that confidence, because a lot of the executive coaching are done to coach people to be showing up with the confidence to represent their business, their team, their region. And so having the confidence is one of the actually key metrics people look for. Improve work performance, retention, relationship, communication. I mean, all these are data that show the return on investment on coaching. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dollar and cents, absolutely, but there are some of those intangible skills that are also important.
So I'm mindful of time, Helen. We've got about 5 minutes left, and 2 slides. Perfect.
Yeah.
So just a really quick recap. I talked about this a few slides ago, but it's always good to reiterate. Define what coaching is and what behaviors should look like inside your organization. Be clear, then people know what they're working towards. Get your leaders on board by hook or by crook. You need somebody on the executive team to be a sponsor. My guess is that at least one of them has already had a coach. It's a thing that they might not admit to openly, but I bet they've already had one. Find out who that is, get them on side. Link coaching to everything you do in terms of business goals and your talent strategies. Build it in, help onboard people with coaching, help develop your high potentials with coaching, build it into your regular processes. And that becomes part of the culture of continuous learning and feedback. When somebody says, I need to give you some feedback, that shouldn't make everybody go, it should be, okay, what's the feedback? Because feedback is just information. If we do it right, it's just information. And then communicate clear organizational expectations. What gets measured, what gets done. What gets done gets results. What gets results gets repeated. And that's the magic of coaching, because it will do those things. So with that, we'd love to hear your questions. You've been putting some of them in the chat, but there's also the Q&A function. So I'll ask Laura, do we have any questions? And Philippe, I have not ignored your question. I've just made a note here. I know that we have that data. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm going to make a note to follow up with you on that after the session.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're a very quiet group, because I'm just told by Laura that there's no questions. Yeah, oh, Andrea's just put one in. Any tips for positioning, introducing coaching skills for leaders? I'd love to know a little bit more about that, Andrea. Give me a little more context. I want to make sure I say it right. Thanks, Poonam. So, we are developing some coaching skills to leaders for the first time ever. Okay. I would, and this is classic change management, I would get them to tell you what the problems are, their challenges. I would get them in the privacy of their own head to recognize that they can't fix this by themselves. And then say, and slides like we've shared with you today can show how coaching can make the difference. And there's all of those wonderful phrases, teach a person to fish and you feed them for, give them a fish, you feed them for a day, teach them to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. That's what coaching does. Coaching is about getting the employee to think for themselves, so they bring you a different quality of challenge or a different quality of question. So they're doing more for themselves, which frees you up to do the things that you as the leader are paid to do. That would be I would position it that way. This is going to solve them problems. Helen, anything to add?
I agree. Yes, I mean, I think every leader has people management issues, challenges they are facing. Let them talk about it and help them to see how coaching help solve their problem, people management issue. There is one question that from Selena on, do you have to be ICF qualified to be considered a coach? There's a lot of established coaching institute out there that use different systems. ICF is the biggest one, and that's the one that LHH is aligned with. So, that's Marshall Goldsmith one, stakeholder, based coaching, and then that is the European one, and then that's neuroscience-based one. So there's a lot of system and process to work coaching. Don't have to be ICF. It's just one of the most common ones that people know of. And then
Andrea, you've asked about ICF. ICF accreditation is a shorthand to know that you have the right skills and you've passed a reasonably rigorous test. There are many reputable coaches out there with no ICF certification, but it's easier to know that somebody will have a certain standard if they have those letters after their name. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Katrina. We'll see you again. One from Jonathan there. Helen, it says, I have a division. It says, I just want a quick reference guide because our leaders don't have time to do more. How do you position the benefits of taking time out to build and invest in coaching skills? I link this to customers. I don't know what business you're in, but I used to work for a printing company, and maybe I can't think of an example that way. But I would go back. So what would you say to a customer who said, "Well, I don't have time to use all of the stuff that you sell in your product. Just tell me the three things it does best." It really underutilizes the product, and I want it quick. I want it fast. Is different to quality.
I want it quick and fast and cheap.
fast, cheap, good. You can have two. Which ones? Because if you want it fast and you want it good, it's not going to be cheap. If you want it fast and you want it to be cheap, then it's not going to be good. And they say this, but we have to be prepared as HR professionals to push back and say, well, do you want a good result or do you want a fast result? Because they're not the same thing. See what they say.
And sounds like chatbot exercise rather than, they just want some quick reference guide rather than that is a mindset. I think that's more fundamental question of where's the mindset shift.
I can give you a one-page document that tells you how to play golf. You will never win a match following that checklist, but it's a checklist. So find a metaphor that works with them. Anyway, on that note, ladies, gentlemen, we've run just a minute over time. Super excited to have shared this with you today. Helen and I really enjoy this stuff. What I'd like to suggest is we'll be back in touch with you. There'll be a link to the recording and an article that we think you'll find interesting. If you have any questions or comments, Helen and I are both on LinkedIn, Andrew Calvert, Helen Fung. Drop us a line. We'd love to connect. Otherwise, reach out to your LHH salesperson. They'd love to talk to you and help continue the conversation. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.